Good day, everyone. My name is Liu Yi. I'm an assistant professor in economics from the School of International Trade and Economics in Jufi. Today, I'm going to talk about Chapter 9, Trade Policies in the Developing Country and Developed Countries. After learning this chapter, you are expected to learn the important foreign trade policies that had been implemented in the history. For example, import substitution industrialization policy and export-oriented industrialization policy. In addition to these policies, we are also going to discuss the foreign trade policies in the United States and in South Korea. In the rest of this video, we will talk about import substitution industrialization policy. After watching this video, you are going to learn the objectives and functions of ISI policy, how it was implemented, and the problems in the ISI policy. Finally, we will talk about how the ISI policy was ended. To begin with, ISI policy was widely used in Latin American countries during 1950s and 1980s. ISI is based on the premise that a country should attempt to reduce the foreign dependency. How to do it? Through local production of industrialized products. This policy was advocated by economists Friedrich List and Alexander Hamilton. There are two key arguments supporting this foreign policy. The first argument is it is centrally planned form of economic development. It is equivalent to a state-induced industrialization through government spending. The second argument is to protect the infant industries by restricting competition in order to provide time for the infant industries to develop and to compete in the international market in the future. In the next slide, we will discuss how ISI policy was created and the background story behind it. First, after the Second World War, developing countries realized that the dependency on mono-agriculture economy is vulnerable to external economic shocks. That is, when world economic crisis happens, export in agricultural products are more negatively influenced than the durable manufactured products. When crises happen, mono-agriculture economies suffers the most. It happened to be the case for most Latin American countries after the Second World War, like Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and so on. Center preference theory reflects the beliefs of ISI policy. Center preference theory is from a famous structuralist economist, Raoul Presbich. He believes that developing countries would be exploited by rich countries through international financial markets and trade. For example, Latin American countries produce cheap agricultural products in the exchange of durable products. This trade pattern worsened their terms of trade, restricted their economic development. Developing countries realized they must increase their self-sufficiency of their own economy and decrease the dependency on developed countries. The key belief of this policy is that in order to achieve self-sufficiency, a country must build its own manufacturing sector through state-led economic development, such as nationalization and subsidization, especially in the key industries. ISI policy is closely related with infant industry argument. First, developing countries may have a potential comparative advantage in some industries, but these industries cannot initially compete with well-established industries in the developed countries. Second, to allow these industries to establish themselves, the government should temporarily support them until they have grown strong enough to compete internationally. Third, ISI policy is focusing on the protection and incubation of domestic industries. As time goes by, they may emerge and be able to compete with imported goods. As a result, local economy become more self-sufficient. Developing countries should produce goods domestically rather than imported whenever possible. The key argument of ISI policies to limit competitive imports. There are many ways to achieve that. For example, high tariff, low import tax, and import quota. Another way is subsidized government loans. The purpose of these measures are to make the key industry to receive enough capital and intermediates. More importantly, to reduce their production cost. Another key purpose of ISI policy is to develop production channels for every stage of production, including the intermediates and final products. To implement ISI policy, two stages are needed. There are substitution and self-sufficiency. The first stage is to substitute the import of final consumption products. Domestic industries are established such as textile, leather, wood, food, home appliance, etc. Import restriction is the mainly approach to achieve the development of this stage. The second stage is to be self-sufficient in capital and intermediate goods. For example, machinery, oil refinery, steel, and other capital-intensive industries. However, non-developing countries can achieve the second stage through ISI policy because developing countries are lack of foreign exchange. The establishment of high capital-intensive sectors needs capital. In order to acquire capital, developing countries started to devaluate their currencies. Foreign capital became less expensive to borrow. It reduces the pressure of insufficient foreign exchange. However, unstable currency brings other problems such as currency crisis and balance of payment. Let's take a look at Table 1. Evidence from Table 1 shows during 1960s, developing countries' manufacturing sectors were under strong protection. Effective protection rate for manufacturing sectors in Pakistan and Chile were as high as 200%. There are many problems in ISI policy. Import substitution industrialization is very costly and very wasteful in the way they use resources, because heavy protection promoted inefficient small industries. Moreover, economic efficiency is reduced because of complex and time-consuming regulations. In addition, high tariff rates is very costly for consumers and also for the firms that need to buy imported inputs for their production. ISI policy also has many other problems. At the beginning, ISI policy brings fast development to Latin American countries. However, many problems emerge. First, this policy depends too much on domestic market, which is rather small compared with the global market. Second, it may be wasteful to support industries. The productivity of domestic industries are very low because lack of competitiveness. They cannot compete globally and to achieve export. With protection, infant industries may never grow up or become competitive. Domestic industries are discouraged to develop its competitiveness because of strong protection. Third, ISI policy requires to develop the capital-intensive industries. However, developing countries lack the resources to realize it, such as capital, human capital, and knowledge. Another problem of this policy is focusing too much on industrialization, ignores the development of infrastructure and agriculture sectors. Such ignorance has serious weakness when a country wants to promote itself in a second stage of development. In this theory, ISI runs contradictory with comparative advantage. In comparative advantage, countries should specialize in the production of goods in which they have particular advantage. In this way, they can engage in international trade. However, in ISI policy, there is no such a deal. There is no government intervention in comparative advantage unless protection is needed for the development of infant industry. The protection of domestic industries distort the resource distribution. It may further create barriers for export growth, since protection brings retaliation. Finally, let's wrap up this section. In this video, we discussed import substitution industrialization. It is aimed to promote economic growth by restricting imports. However, ISI policy may have many problems. Due to these problems, import substitution industrialization was abandoned in the mid-1980s. That's the end of this video. Thanks for your listening.